70 human rights organizations from around the globe are sounding the alarm over the erosion of freedom in Britain. They've written an open letter to the UK Prime Minister blasting the government's response to surveillance leaks. RT Sarah Firth has more on their appeal.
Well, some very strong words for the Prime Minister there from those human rights organisations, and they're fighting back against what they call the eroding of fundamental rights in the UK. Now, let's take a look over some of the main points that that letter raises, and their concerns centre around the use of terrorism legislation against David Miranda when he was detained at Heathrow Airport. They also talk about the sustained pressure against media organisations reporting the Edward Snowden leaks. The Guardian newspapers come under a huge amount of pressure. You cast your mind back. They had government officials actually enter their building and destroy the hard drives. Now, I think a very interesting point that the letter makes is over the potential violation of freedom of expression. Now, this is the argument we hear the UK government use a lot when they're condemning the leaks being published, that it's damaging national security in the UK. Now, in the letter it says that the protection of national security can be a legitimate reason for limiting the freedom of expression, but, and this is the really important point, that governments must demonstrate that the expression actually harms the national security, not simply enough for them to say that it will. Now, coming up this week, we're going to see the heads of MI5, MI6 and GCHQ questioned in an open evidence session. That's going to be broadcast via a public satellite link. So this debate's certainly not going away, however much you can imagine the UK government will be wishing it will right now. And of course, we'll be bringing you all those developments as they happen.
Well, let's now talk more on this open letter to Prime Minister Cameron with one of its authors, Thomas Hughes, from the Article 19 organization defending freedom of information. And Mr. Hughes, thank you so much for joining us here on RT to discuss this. Well, as we can see, this letter to Prime Minister David Cameron is a global initiative. Why, in your opinion, have so many activists from around the world decided to join in?
Well, I think many of the press freedom and freedom of expression organisations internationally felt the same degree of concern that the UK, a traditional defender of freedom of expression, should be eroding press freedoms like this.
So what kind of a reaction, I mean, what kind of response do you expect to get from the Prime Minister?
Well, I'm not sure what the reaction will be from the UK government. Certainly we, regardless of the reaction, we will continue to pursue this. We will continue to do our global advocacy around this issue. And we will also continue, from an Article 19 perspective, to give input to the High Court case, obviously, surrounding David Miranda at the moment, and also do a submission to the parliamentary committee that will be reviewing The Guardian in the context of terrorism legislation.
Well, you know, some officials say that leaking of classified data indeed jeopardizes national security. To what extent do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, of course, national security is a very serious issue, and there are permissible limits to freedom of expression and press freedoms according to national security, and they are well prescribed in international law. Our concern is that the UK government has simply gone way beyond what those normal prescribed limits are, and therefore the oversight and accountability of those actions is very much in question.
Well, you know, the chiefs of the UK spy agencies will be are expected, I should say, to testify in public this week. What do you expect to hear from them? What would you like them to say?
Well, probably more of the same, I would have thought. This very open-ended argument that the mass surveillance that's taken place is crucial to national security without any kind of substance or significant evidence to support that, and that The Guardian and other media besides, but The Guardian has somehow violated and undermined national security.
Intelligence officials in Washington are blaming the agencies for, you know, ordering these operations. So is this a situation where the pot is calling the kettle black? I mean, who's responsible, in your opinion, for this?
Well, responsibility lies with the government. They are obviously responsible for overseeing the actions of security agencies, and that's undeniable. The way they're reacting, one assumes that they are possibly trying to cover a trail, possibly the internal discussions that are ongoing between the UK authorities and the security agencies is unknown to us, but that's actually part of the point. That's part of the interest, that there has been this overreach. There is a lack of accountability and transparency. We need more public answers to these questions. We need to know more about what's been going on.
All right, Thomas Hughes from the Article 19 organization defending freedom of information. Thank you so much for talking to us here on RT, sir.